Books. There's a lot of them, and it's been a while since I touched one. May was the month that I decided I should probably get back into reading, and I'm happy I made that decision. I spent May getting back into the wonderful world of books, and I ended up reading some really good pieces of work. I spent most of my time reading fiction, but a non-fiction book did end up managing to sneak itself into my hands. So without further ado, here's what I read in May. I read 5 books in total, 4 fiction and 1 non-fiction. First book I read this month was Cat's Cradle by Vonnegut. Vonnegut is one of my favorite writers of all time, and I've read Cat's Cradle quite a few times already. I decided to read it again in May, and I'm really glad I did. It's a great book that employs humor effectively to talk about things like science, technology, religion, and a lot more. And I don't usually laugh out loud when I'm reading a book, and I didn't for this one, but it still was pretty funny. It's a really fun read, and the book comes together as a series of episodes, not really chapters, even though it does have more than 100 chapters, but it's a really short book. The chapters are more like episodes that capture a series of moments that then come together to tell a really wholesome story. Well, not wholesome, but it's a cohesive story. I love the way the book talks about religion and belief and how central it is to the human experience to have to believe in something regardless of what it is. It really made me think, if you will, and it was such a fun read, and I think I'll be coming back to it as the years go on a lot more times. As Danger on Goodreads put it, I've read this book 4 times. It's better than the Bible because unlike the Bible, this book knows it's fiction. Go read it. It's great. After finishing Cat's Cradle, I moved on to read To Die in Benares by K Madavane, a collection of short stories that tackle topics from colonialism to religion to death, and every single short story is absolutely wonderful. K Madavane was an Indian author who grew up in Pondicherry under French colonialism. To Die in Benares was actually originally written in French, and only translated into English around 10 years ago. Most of the short stories are also incredibly dark and depressing, not really mincing any words when it comes to talking about death, but they are great reads. The scenery is vivid, painting the banks of the Ganga onto the theater screen in your mind and allowing you to get a feel for a place that is so sacred to so many people because of the wonders and importance of dying a good death. I suggest everybody to check this book out and read it because it is an absolute pleasure, and now although it might not be very happy at times, most of the time, it's an experience that you need to have. After finishing that depressing collection of short stories, no matter how excellent they were, they're still depressing, I moved on to reading Shadow of the Gods by Gwynne, another pretty depressing book. It's a fantasy book that has loose Norse inspirations, and I demolished it in a few days because of how quickly it drew me in and it kept me hooked. It's a Norse-inspired kind of vengeance novel set in a world whose gods died long ago, but rumors are that they won't be dead for long. When the gods died, the bones and artifacts they left behind became magical items that are extremely valuable for people in the land that they live. Bands of mercenaries and for-hire treasure hunters roam the land seeking these artifacts and hunting down the children of the gods who were treated as subhuman and punished for the crimes of the gods, usually kept as slaves. The book itself follows 3 main protagonists, Orca, Varg, and Elvar, and you are introduced to them in that order. All these protagonists have suffered greatly, have really dark backstories, and just like everybody else in this fairly grimdark world, and their stories, as you progress, draw you in incredibly well. Gwynne's character work is absolutely incredible, and you become attached to every single character in the book by either hating them, loving them, or becoming intrigued by them. Even if a character is on screen for only a few pages, they seem real to you. There's not much more I can say without ruining the joy of the book. Joy isn't the right word because it is so depressing, but the book is incredibly well done, and you need to go read it now. It's so good. After I finished The Shadow of the Gods by Gwynne, I decided to take a break from fiction for a while, and I read the Almanack of Naval Ravikant, which is a collection of blog posts, Twitter threads, and podcast interviews of Naval, put together in a coherent way to take inspiration from. Naval is a very influential personality in the Silicon Valley world, from being an angel investor to having started quite a few companies. He's done a lot of work in the startup world, and he has a really large pull, and he's developed a lot of wisdom over the years. So it's the one nonfiction book I read this month, and it did end up having quite a few good bits of wisdom. There's a lot of interesting tips on building wealth and happiness that I enjoyed, and although I don't agree with everything in the book, it definitely was a good collection of advice from the mouth of a very successful man. So if you're into, getting advice on how to build wealth or how to be happy or how to find meaning in your career, then I suggest you take a look through the book. It's completely free, available as a PDF on the internet. I did buy a paperback version because I'm cool and I wanted to have a physical copy of a book, but I'd recommend you read it. It's pretty good. The final book I read in May was American Gods by Neil Gaiman, and as I write this, or really read this script, I see that I had a common theme this month of reading books about gods and religion, and death, and a lot of other interesting things. American Gods is a great fantasy book, and a great book in general. It follows an ex-con named Shadow after he gets out of prison. The day he leaves prison, he finds out that his wife was killed in a car crash, and he ends up meeting a god named Mr. Wednesday on a plane back to where he's from. Mr. Wednesday isn't his real name, and you can probably figure out what his real name is if you think a little bit about Norse mythology. Anyways, I can't really spill too much about the book's actual plot without ruining the experience, but it really is a great book that talks about the rise of new religions in America, these religions being things like the internet, highways, and a bunch of other modern improvements on life, and the falling off of the cultures and old religions that people brought with them to America when they immigrated the first time they came over, regardless of how long ago that was. Some of the references in parts of the book haven't aged the best, but it is still a great read, and you should probably go and read it right now. Neil Gaiman is a master storyteller, and all of his books are great. I love American Gods. It was a really, really nice read. It was a little bit of a change of pace from some of the other books that I read. A lot of them were a little bit faster paced. This was a little bit slower, but it still was an excellent read, and you should go read it right now. Shadow's a great character. There's a lot of great character work. It's a really interesting plot, and the scenery is amazing. Neil actually wrote this while he was driving across America on a road trip. That's how he got the inspiration for every place in the book. It's super cool, and it's awesome. So that's what I read in May. That's a pretty different video from what I usually put out on this channel. I'll make one of these every month now that I go on, as long as I'm actually reading a book, at least a book in a month. I usually make videos about like programming or math or productivity. So if you're interested in that or interested in these book videos, then consider hitting that subscribe button, liking this video. Maybe leave a comment if you have any questions or concerns about anything that I said in this video. You can join my Discord server, link in the description down below. If you want to talk about any of these books with anybody in the Discord server or with me, if you want to hear more of my stupid and bad opinions, then follow me on Twitter or Instagram, links in the description. And if you enjoyed the video, consider hitting the Patreon. But as always, I hope you enjoyed the video and have a great day.